Hello, this is Jodie Brunning from Physicians and Scientists for Global Responsibility. And today I'm talking with Professor of Public Health, Grant Schofield from Auckland University of Technology. I've now got a 21 and an 18-year-old, and every year they would go into and have sort of mental health sessions. And every year I would say, did they talk about anything below, your spine?
Yeah.
And they would tell me no. There was never a discussion helping them understand the biology that underpins a lot of the mental illness we're seeing
Yeah,
now. And
$100%.
that's becoming more and more solid.
Yeah, what I see both, at the university, and I've got a 14-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 23-year-old, and with their friends is a high amount of poor mental health, especially anxiety. I see a lot of beautiful young people who so-and-so can't come to their exam. They've got anxiety. And or depression, and this is such a high number of students, and it never used to be a thing 25 years ago. And just to show you how much of a thing it is, New Zealand's data on psychological distress. So this is what gets measured in the National Health Survey, is not mental illness, but just an instrument called the K10, which measures psychological distress, and you get be categorized as having severe psychological distress at the time you filled that out in a nationally representative sample. In 2005, our 16 to 24-year-olds, that was running at 5% at any one time had severe psychological distress.
This is 2005.
2005, and it's not quite representative because girls generally about twice as high as boys, and it works out to be that average. And that was ticking along quite stably until about 2012, 2014. And then as it's done in every other psychological measure in every other English-speaking country, at least in the world, it started to tilt steeply upward, and it's continued like that, such that in 2021, it's moved from 5% in 2005 to 25%. And people know about some of that distress and things, and this one isn't a matter of more diagnosis. This is a reasonably robust reported state of mind that's repeated in large surveys. As a parent and an adult, and then an educator and a researcher in this area, I just despair. We're the adults in society. How come we're not stopping this? And I feel quite strongly about that. I know everyone who's in health and medicine, and anyone who's a young person as well, knows deeply that they've about this and wants to do something about it, whether you're affected yourself personally, or people who are, or you're in a position to help people who are. Gosh, I mean, it's hard not to want to cry really about it and shout about it, and it's just not even a topic in the news.
No.
And especially for our young women, I mean, boys end up having more suicides, but at every other point below that, even including attempts, self-harm, hospitalizations, major depressive disorder, poor and low mood, girls are twice as bad as boys. And we're not talking about young women's mental health at all. It's not a topic in society.
No. And what we're understanding is some of these people will come from homes that are traumatic, that are stressful, or some of these people may be being bullied. But the greater majority of these kids are living the normal lives that their ancestors would not end up disabled mentally. Can I say that? Mentally disabled, mentally just sort of caught by, trapped.
Well, we end up with a population, and this is not a palliable message, that's fragile.
Yes.
And they're fragile not because of their lack of effort in life or laziness or anything that's on them, but we've created a food environment, a physical activity environment, a social environment where they don't expose themselves to stuff that's hard, and then they can recover from and be a better version of themselves. And that's not telling people to harden up or do better. It's just like, if you're going to have some robust biology to deal with the stresses and strains in life. And a life well lived, remember, has heaps of stress in it. That's what a life well lived has.
Yes.
But negotiating that is the thing, right? And so you need the building blocks for that. Oh yeah, well that just reminds me of just taking my master's in nutrition class last night, and we're doing exactly this, right? So you can imagine a normal lifespan. You're young, and you just think about how the same meal has a profoundly different effect on you at a different age. You're a young 14-year-old girl or boy. You have a rice meal, and puts your blood sugar up because you're so insulin sensitive. You deal with that, and your blood sugar and insulin are back to normal pretty quick. In many ways, the exact macronutrient composition doesn't make much difference there. But as you get into your 20s and then 30s and then early 40s, well, a whole bunch of things are happening to you: stress, poor sleep, not enough sunlight, blah, blah. All of the things independently cause insulin resistance. And so now you'll go to your doctor and they'll go, well, your blood sugar's normal, Jody or Grant. Nothing to worry about. But in fact, the way you're normalizing your blood sugar is through hypersecreting insulin, hyperinsulinemia, which we know is an independent and primary cause of all metabolic disease. And that could continue until your 50s, and you've got a bit fatter, high amounts of insulin, because insulin turns off fat burning. It's a storage hormone. You down-regulate your activity. You feel a bit lethargic. Just your typical development of a few metabolic syndrome factors.
And you've got blood glucose, but you've got higher circulating insulin.
Yeah, you can still normalize your blood glucose, while normal medicine doesn't pick this up. And then eventually you turn up to your doctor and they go, oh, your blood glucose is a bit higher than it should be. It's not what I would, it's not 8 millimoles or something. You haven't really got diabetes. Your HbA1c is not over 50, but it might be 44 or something. That's pre-diabetes. So no, nothing to worry about, Grant. Just maybe lose some weight. You should try a bit harder, but just keep an eye on that. And first of all, it's not pre-anything. Just the reality is now, no matter how much insulin you secrete, you cannot normalize your blood glucose. This is not pre. This is like 3 decades in to metabolic dysfunction, and we've missed the entire preceding 30 years of intervening because we don't look for that. And then eventually your blood glucose gets to the magic number of 50 or something, which who knows why that's the magic number. And then they go, oh, okay, actually have diagnosed diabetes now. And then of course you start to enter into the stage of pancreatic failure. So now you've got an underproducing pancreas on top of severe insulin resistance. And then you start treating that by giving yourself extra endogenous insulin. It's madness. It makes no sense to be, and adding extra insulin at that point. The most obvious thing to do is to, eat less carbs so you don't have to put the insulin in the first place. Other ones like diabetes we've just ended up with, because it's the diet's such an, these conditions are so easily reversible with good dietary and behavioral changes, that people keep going, well, you keep going, why are we treating these things with just ineffective medicines when we've got these ridiculously good behavioral treatments? And then other ones like mental health are still the problem of the times. I mean, I don't know the whole solution to mental health, because diet, as you say, I think is critical, but there are other things going on that I don't like, vaping and social media and phone use and screen time, that I don't have the answer to those. Oh yeah, so Precure, which is with a K, P-R-E-K-U-R-E, is a bit of a play on the words that prevention is cure. And I mean, Louise, my wife, who has a PhD in sort of behavior change around public health, is much more risk orientated than I am. I'm, want to be a sort of safe scientist academic, and she's always on about that. Not only am I not making any difference, things are getting worse on our watch, and she's 100% right. And so you can do careful randomized trials and show that, you can reverse diabetes, or, whatever that stuff, many of which we've done over the years. But it doesn't turn into practice at all. In fact, practice pushes the other way and just keeps carrying on doing what it's doing. So where we've ended up landing is, I hadn't even thought of there was such a profession until Louise was talking about it. And then we started to magnify that. And New Zealand's been a really good early adopter of health coaching. So, a lot of existing health professionals will come and do some of that training with the sort of coaching approach, which is, interestingly so related to the initial psychology training that you get, shutting up and listening, allowing them to be heard, that they will have some of the solutions in mind. If you tell someone to do something, they almost certainly won't do it, but if they start telling you, they probably will. So the coach approach is such a learnable, fun way to use it. And I've really re-embraced that stuff and used it with my own coaching now. And so then we had the health coaching, and then there's now an association, HCANSA, which accredits both across Australia and New Zealand for health coaches. It's become a professional thing. It's become, the UK's NHS is probably the most advanced with this. And then we've introduced the sort of metabolic health coach and the mental health coaching as more advanced pathways with pre-cure. And yeah, we're really proud. We've trained I think about 1,500 health professionals in the whole approach, but in New Zealand and Australia now, and fully accredited through the full courses, about 500 health coaches, aiming for many thousands. But yeah, that's been such a rewarding journey. No, I just think that last little story you're telling about, that choice for young people. When you see an individual story of a young person that's turned their bipolar or their psychosis or their, Crohn's disease or their, various things, around completely, completely disappeared. It doesn't exist anymore. Every one of those, even by itself, is a huge celebration. But behind that are 10 that have never got to the solution and lived a whole life with an easily reversible condition. And that's the tragedy of not investing in this, actually, are those, each one of those 10 people.